Imagine a self-driving car slamming on its brakes before its cameras even, see the child running into the street.
Right, because it didn't physically spot the child at all.
Exactly. Instead, it heard the child's smartwatch broadcast a trajectory warning to a nearby street lamp. And then that street lamp instantly beamed a red alert to the car's braking system.
All in the milliseconds.
Yeah, zero line of sight, no human reaction time, just this invisible, instantaneous network of data literally saving a life. And today we're unpacking a highly curated AI news digest from June 1st, 2026. And it proves that this scenario isn't just science fiction anymore.
No, it's happening right now.
It really is. And you are out there, a lifelong learner, and you know technology is accelerating, but you probably don't want to drown in technical manuals just to figure out what actually matters.
Right, you just want to understand the mechanisms that are actually driving our world forward.
Exactly. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Well, I think it is incredibly crucial to look past the sort of superficial headlines here. What we are really examining in this digest is a fundamental evolution in how artificial intelligence handles variables.
Which is a huge shift.
It is. If we are setting a baseline for today, the core theme connecting everything from, a hospital clinic to a busy city intersection to your living room is the relationship between data latency and the stakes of the outcome.
Latency and stakes. Okay.
Right. Because we're no longer talking about AI as this background processor that crunches historical data in a server room over several hours.
Yeah, like waiting for a report to run.
Exactly. We are talking about edge computing. We are talking about systems that interpret, synthesize, and act upon physical realities in milliseconds.
Wow. Okay, that concept of latency and stakes is the perfect framework. So let's start with the absolute highest stakes imaginable, but in a relatively static environment, which is our health.
Right, the clinical side of things.
Yeah. So the first major development in this 2026 digest focuses on hospitals globally adopting these AI-driven diagnostic tools. And specifically, they mention cancer and cardiovascular diseases.
Which are notoriously complex to diagnose early.
Absolutely. And the digest notes that AI precision officially rivals human experts now. But what I really want to understand is the how. Like, how is it actually beating a highly trained oncologist at reading a scan?
Well, it really comes down to what the eye is actually capable of perceiving. When a human doctor looks at an MRI or a mammogram, they're looking at a visual representation of tissue.
Right, they're looking for an image.
Yes, they're looking for shapes, shadows, asymmetries, all based on their years of medical training. But an AI it isn't looking at a picture.
Wait, what is it doing then?
It is analyzing the actual spaces between the pixels. It's reading the scan as a massive mathematical density matrix.
Oh, wow. So it's seeing numbers, not tissue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it can detect a microcalcification or some subtle variation in tissue density that is literally mathematically invisible to the human visual cortex.
Because our eyes just aren't built for that level of detail.
Right. And here is the real mechanism that makes it rival human experts. It doesn't just spot the anomaly. In a fraction of a second, it cross-references that exact pixel gradient against millions of historical cases.
Millions. That's crazy.
Millions, yeah. Tracking the longitudinal outcomes of patients who had that precise microscopic pattern, say, 10 years ago.
So it knows exactly what happened to them?
Yes. And a human doctor, no matter how brilliant they are, simply cannot hold 10 million case studies in their working memory.
I mean, that makes me think of, like, the ultimate medical resident.
Right.
If you have a resident who instantly overlays your current MRI with every single MRI ever taken on Earth in the last decade, just to find a 1 in a million pattern match.
They can just hand that finding right to the attending physician.
Right. But this brings up a massive shift in the actual job of the doctor. Because if the machine handles all that raw pattern recognition, the data, does the doctor just become, a rubber stamp?
That is a very common assumption. But what's fascinating here is that the reality highlighted in the digest actually points the other way.
Oh, really? How so?
This technology is actually returning doctors to the core of medicine, which is patient care. Because the AI is handling the immense cognitive load of that pixel-by-pixel pattern recognition, it essentially compresses what used to be hours of analysis into literally seconds.
Oh, I see. So the physician is freed from the darkroom.
Exactly. Instead of squinting at monitors for hours, they can actually talk to you. They can evaluate your family history, your lifestyle, your mental health, and then synthesize the AI's hyper-accurate finding into a holistic treatment plan.
So the AI diagnoses the scan, but the human treats the patient.
That's the perfect way to put it.
which fundamentally changes healthcare delivery. I mean, it lowers the latency of diagnosis to near zero, which cuts costs and obviously saves lives because you are catching a cardiovascular event before the human heart even knows it's compromised.
Precisely. The stakes are life and death, but the latency is eliminated.
Okay, but I want to pivot back to our framework here. Because it's one thing to have near zero latency when you're analyzing a static MRI file in a highly controlled, sterile clinic.
Oh, absolutely.
It is an entirely different beast when we move out into the physical world. So let's talk about the automotive sector.
Yeah, this is where the physics of the problem become incredibly complex. Moving from a static data set to a dynamic, completely chaotic environment, like a city street, introduces variables that are practically infinite.
Right, weather, pedestrians, construction.
Exactly. The stakes are just as high as in healthcare.
Yeah.
I mean, human lives are on the line, but the latency window for decision-making is drastically shorter, and the environment is entirely unpredictable.
Right. And the digest covers these massive investments in autonomous driving. But what jumped out to me wasn't about, like, better cameras or sharper LiDAR.
No, it's about the network.
Yeah. We've been hearing the promises of V2X, vehicle-to-everything communication for years, but this digest shows we've finally hit the tipping point. It's no longer just siloed R&D.
Right.
The major tech giants and the legacy car manufacturers are finally sharing the exact same infrastructure protocols.
Which, honestly, is the only way autonomous driving actually works at scale.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if a car relies solely on its own onboard sensors, its cameras, its radar, it is essentially driving through the world exactly like a human driver would.
It has a limited field of vision.
Right. It has a line of sight. It has blind spots. It has to compute every single variable from scratch as it physically encounters it. But V2X changes the entire paradigm from reactive to predictive.
Okay, wait. Let me make sure I'm fully wrapping my head around the mechanism here. With V2X, the car is talking to the traffic lights to know exactly when they will turn red. And it's sensing a pedestrian's smartphone signal before they even step off the curb. And it's pinging the cars around it to know their exact speed and trajectory.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Millisecond by millisecond.
It reminds me of a massive flock of birds. You know how a starling murmuration can dive and weave in perfect synchrony without ever crashing into each other?
Yeah, the classic murmuration analogy.
Right, because they're acting as a single connected mind. Is that basically what V2X is doing for cars?
Well, the flock of birds analogy works brilliantly for the synchrony part of it.
Mm.
But it actually falls short in one really crucial way regarding the mechanism itself.
Oh, how so?
Birds still rely on visual cues and just incredibly fast reaction times. I mean, a bird can't know what the bird 50 rows ahead is doing. It only reacts to its immediate neighbors.
Oh, okay. I see where you're going.
Yeah, whereas V2X relies on predictive, invisible data. A car using V2X knows exactly what a car a half mile ahead is doing. So if a vehicle completely out of your line of sight slams on its brakes because of black ice, your car receives that telemetry data instantly, and it adjusts your torque before your tires even reach the ice.
That is insane. So it's less like a flock of individual birds and more like a single massive distributed brain.
Exactly. It's a distributed intelligence.
That distributed brain concept is wild. But, okay, as a learner trying to poke holes in this, what happens when a piece of that brain just goes offline?
That is the big question.
Right, because we've all had our Wi-Fi drop in the middle of a meeting. What happens to this whole V2X utopia if the network experiences packet loss, or a sensor gets covered in mud, or there's severe latency in the city's power grid?
It's a very valid concern.
If the car is relying on the street lamp to tell it about the pedestrian, and the street lamp loses power, doesn't the whole system just crash?
And that right there is exactly the engineering hurdle that delayed this tipping point until now. And the answer the industry found is sensor fusion and localized fallback.
Localized fallback, meaning what exactly?
The digest details how these systems are built with profound redundancies. The AI isn't only relying on the V2X network. It is constantly running a localized edge computing model using its own LiDAR and optical cameras at the exact same time.
Oh, so it's doing both simultaneously.
Yes. So if the V2X signal drops, or even if the system detects latency that exceeds a safe mathematical threshold, the AI instantly downgrades its reliance on the network.
And reverts back to being a normal self-driving car.
Exactly. It reverts to an autonomous, isolated driving mode. It might reduce its speed, increase its following distance, just to compensate for the loss of that predictive data.
That's brilliant.
It's seamlessly shifting between being a node in a massive network and being a totally self-contained survival castle hundreds of times a second.
So it's essentially balancing two different realities, what the network tells it is happening and what its own eyes are seeing, and reconciling them instantly.
Which is a staggering amount of compute happening under the hood.
Yeah, no kidding.
And it requires the AI to actively measure the trustworthiness of its own data. Like if the V2X says the road is clear, but the onboard camera detects an anomaly that might be debris,
They have to make a choice.
right? The AI has to weigh the probability of a false positive against the catastrophic risk of a collision. And it has to do it in milliseconds. That is real-time, high-stakes decision-making at its absolute peak.
Okay, so we've seen how AI manages latency and stakes in the strict, biological rules of the human body, and we've explored how it manages the chaotic, high-speed physics of a city street.
Two very different but very high-stakes environments.
Exactly. But I want to take our framework into an entirely different realm now. What happens when AI steps into an environment where the rules aren't dictated by biology or physics?
Oh.
What happens when it enters the realm of human creativity where the stakes are entirely subjective?
Now we are moving from the analytical to the highly abstract. The latency doesn't really matter in the same way, and obviously the stakes aren't life or death, but the data processing mechanisms are just as complex.
Yeah, so the final section of our digest focuses heavily on AI in entertainment. And look, we all know streaming algorithms track our watch time to recommend the next binge-worthy show.
Right, we've had that for a while.
That's old news. But what's fundamentally shifting, according to this 2026 update, is that AI is actively composing original music and generating high-level visual art.
It's taking a very active role.
Yeah, it isn't just a novelty or some clunky text-to-image generator anymore. It is producing content that is gaining serious cultural traction. But, and here's where it gets really interesting. I have to push back a little.
Okay, go for it.
I really struggle with the word originality here.
Why is that?
Because, if an AI is just analyzing vast amounts of existing data, like, let's say, feeding in every funk bass line from the 1970s, mapping out the frequencies, and then using math to spit out a new bass line based on those historical patterns, is it truly being creative?
It's a fair question.
Or is it just acting as the world's most encyclopedic DJ? Is it basically taking the entirety of human artistic history, putting it on a digital turntable, and just remixing it into a slightly different order?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, that DJ analogy is a great starting point. But we have to look deeper at the mechanism of how these models actually work.
Okay, walk me through it.
They aren't just cutting and pasting existing audio files together. The digest highlights the use of advanced generative adversarial networks, or GANs and diffusion models.
Right, the real heavy algorithmic lifting.
Exactly. So when AI analyzes those 1970s funk bass lines, it isn't just memorizing the individual notes, it is breaking them down into this multi-dimensional latent space.
Latent space.
Yeah, it is mathematically mapping the relationships between the rhythm, the syncopation, and the harmonic tension.
Wait, so it's learning the underlying grammar of funk, not just memorizing the vocabulary.
Precisely. And when it generates a new bass line, it is traversing that mathematical space to find a path that has literally never existed before, but still obeys the grammar it learned.
Uh-huh.
So is that remixing? Or is that the exact same thing a human musician does when they listen to 100 hours of James Brown and then pick up a bass guitar to write their own song?
Yeah.
Human artists are also trained on historical data sets. We just call it inspiration.
Okay, wait, but let me challenge that. Because when a human listens to James Brown and then picks up a guitar, there is emotional intent there.
Of course.
They are trying to express a feeling, a lived experience, or a frustration. The AI doesn't have a lived experience. It's just fulfilling a prompt by navigating that latent space you mentioned. It doesn't actually feel the funk.
And that is exactly where the source material draws the line. The digest explicitly notes that AI is blurring the boundaries between human and machine creativity.
Because it has the mechanics, but not the soul.
Exactly. The AI provides the raw generative capability at an unimaginable scale, but it lacks the intent. And this is why the digest frames these AI systems not as replacements for artists, but as a new kind of algorithmic muse. It's a tool.
Oh, so it's a collaboration again, much like the doctor and the diagnostic AI we talked about earlier.
Yes, that's a perfect parallel. Think about the modern artist. A producer might use an AI to generate 100 different melodic variations in that latent space within, say, 5 seconds.
Right. Impossible for a human to do that fast.
99 of them might be mathematically perfect, but totally emotionally hollow. But one of them has this strange, unexpected syncopation that just catches the producer's ear.
And then the human takes over.
Right. The human intuition steps in, selects that raw output, and builds a fully realized song around it. The AI did the heavy lifting of generation, but the human provided the curation and the emotional context.
Wow, that fundamentally redefines what entertainment is. I mean, it really challenges our definition of artistry.
It absolutely does.
We are moving away from the idea that art is strictly the mechanical act of putting paint on a canvas or fingers on a fretboard. If the machine can execute the mechanics flawlessly, then the value of the artist shifts entirely to their taste, their curation, and the emotional intent they inject into the final product.
Exactly. The human becomes the director of the algorithm. And this actually ties our entire discussion together perfectly.
It really does.
Whether we are talking about a doctor curating a treatment plan from an AI diagnosis, or a traffic grid managing the flow of V2X vehicles, or a musician selecting an AI-generated melody, the nature of human input is evolving across the board.
So, what does this all mean for you, the listener? When we step back and look at the massive shifts outlined in this June 2026 digest, the trajectory is just crystal clear.
It's all moving in the same direction.
Yeah. We started with the doctor's office, where an AI is reading the microscopic spaces between pixels to predict a cardiovascular event before a human eye ever could.
Lowering latency to zero.
Exactly. Then we moved into the streets, where invisible V2X networks are allowing cars to silently talk to stoplights and build this predictive distributed brain to eliminate collisions.
Managing incredible stakes.
And we ended up in the studio, where AI is mapping the latent space of human history to compose the background music of our lives. Artificial intelligence is undeniably the new infrastructure.
It really is.
It has moved from the server room into the physical world, managing latency and stakes in literally every aspect of our daily routine.
And speaking directly to you, it is crucial to recognize the common thread here. Because these advancements aren't just changing the tools we use, they are fundamentally changing the roles we play.
The human role.
Yes, the AI is taking over the raw data processing, the pattern recognition, and the mechanical execution. It is becoming the ultimate engine of generation.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway, the shift from doing to editing.
Exactly. And that leaves us with a critical, perhaps even provocative question to really mull over as you go about your week.
I love this. Let's hear it.
If AI is successfully rivaling our best medical experts in complex diagnostics, and if it is flawlessly navigating our chaotic city streets by predicting variables we can't even see,
Right.
and if it is instantly generating music and art that resonates with us emotionally, what does that leave as the uniquely human skill of the future?
Wow.
As these AI tools take on the heavy lifting of creating, calculating, and executing, is our fundamental role shifting away from being the doers of the world? Are we entering an era where human value is solely defined by our ability to be the editors, the curators, and the experiencers of an AI-generated reality?
That is a staggering thought to leave on. The idea that your most valuable skill tomorrow won't be your ability to generate an answer, but your ability to ask the right question and edit the result.
It changes everything.
It really changes how you look at this entire wave of technology. You don't have to drink from the fire hose, and you don't have to drown in the details of the code. You just have to know how to direct the flow.
Well said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the systems around you, stay incredibly curious, and keep learning. We'll catch you on the next one.